Good morning, everyone, and a very warm welcome to today's live session organized by Ujjain Incubation Center. We are excited to have you all with us for an insightful discussion on modern trade fundamentals for startups. In today's fast moving startup ecosystem, सिर्फ प्रोडक्ट बनाना काफ़ी नहीं होता, राइट मार्केट, राइट चैनल और राइट स्ट्रैटेजी समझना इक्वली इम्पॉर्टेंट है। और उसी टॉपिक पर हमें गाइड करने के लिए हमारे साथ एक इंडस्ट्री एक्सपर्ट मौजूद हैं। इट गिव्स मी ग्रेट प्लेजर टू वेलकम मिस्टर सपन गोयल, हेड डिजिटल कॉमर्स आईटीसी लिमिटेड। With his vast experience in modern trade and digital commerce, today's session will surely help startups understand how to scale, position, and grow in competitive markets. And also, a quick note for all the participants, please feel free to post your questions in the chat during the session. We'll take them up and answer them at the end during the Q&A segment. So, without any further delay, let's begin this learning journey. Over to you, sir. Can we have the PPT, please?
Yeah, Muskan, we can start, right? Yeah, hi. Good morning, everyone. Firstly, thank you, Muskan, for the introduction and inviting me to this session. I think it's a great initiative by the government, wherein all these startups, get to learn from each other, and it's great for the country. So I think I wish you all the best. So today, what Muskan had briefed me was about modern channel fundamentals and how the whole retail landscape in India is evolving, and and how as startups there are a lot of opportunities for you, uh, for a lot of product based startups, especially to get that first mover advantage in this landscape, in this retail landscape. So if I have to set context, obviously there's a product that you have, but that product has to also reach the customer, right? And for that you need a channel to distribute your product. So all these channels, be it a kirana outlet or a modern trade outlet, or now there's a growing wave of q-commerce accounts like Blinkit, Swiggy, Zepto, uh, even retailers like Reliance have JioMart, DMart has DMart Ready. So all these online, offline, in our world we call them phygital channels, which is physical plus digital channels. But all of these are distribution channels for us to reach the consumer. Now, obviously, hence each distribution channel has its pros and cons. Earlier, when these channels were not evolved or not existing in India, it was about all the so India has roughly 5 million plus kirana outlets. So one kirana outlet per roughly 100 to 100 to 200 people in India. That's the kind of kirana density that India had. uh, so many big and small neighborhood shops from which people used to shop. Now obviously that was a very distributed network of reaching the customer, wherein a lot of the legacy companies had gained that first mover advantage of building systems and processes and reaching the last mile. So for example, I work for ITC, which has the second highest coverage in the country in FMCG. If you also add all the cigarette outlets or all the pan outlets in the country, ITC has the biggest distribution network in the country. From an FMCG perspective, HUL is the company which has the biggest distribution. Now, in the traditional setup, for a new age company, it would be very difficult to reach those smaller outlets and to drive distribution. That is where these modern channels come in. So these are the channels through which you have to centrally negotiate with one retailer, and you instantly reach the top 10, 20, 30% consumers in the country, the ones who have the disposable income and are also discerning enough to buy products from you, especially products in the renewable space, or products you know which are innovating in that segment or in the organic space or in the healthy space. These are the consumers who have the disposable income and the discerning mindset to buy, which is where now startups can reach these consumers directly without having to go through the nitty-gritties of of traditional trade, kiranas, etc. And that is where, as startups, you guys have a strategic advantage. Basically, there is a low entry barrier, and hence opportunity for you to reach your first set of consumers really fast and scale really fast, which is where in the last 10 odd years you would have seen so many companies scaling up to very good valuation. So Mamaearth was one example which scaled to a $2 billion valuation. It's a less than 10-year-old company. There are so many more like that. In the just recently, a company like Moxie Beauty, called Moxie Beauty, has raised 130 crores. So that's how the space is evolving. All these companies are built on distribution in the modern channels. So, for example, a Moxie Beauty, most of their revenues will be coming in modern channels. Similarly, ITC has recently acquired 4 or 5 companies in the last 5 years, like Mother Splash, Yoga Bar, uh, Prasuma. All of these companies have built their first 50 100 crore revenue from this channel, and hence the importance of this channel. So what I wanted to spend some time today is just uh, a few of the important pieces that you need to keep in mind from my 12 years of being in this. Most of my experience is in this channel. So what are the key things that maybe you guys can pick up from my little experience and gain? So that is the intent of the presentation. Uh, we can move to the next slide, please. Acha, sorry, I can only navigate. Yeah. So I'll just start with the basic fundamental. What is a distribution channel? A distribution channel is a network of individuals, organizations, which is involved in getting your product from the factory to the consumer or from the producer to the consumer. So, so obviously there are different types of distribution channels. There is a direct distribution channel, for example, companies selling through their website. That is a direct distribution channel where you sell the product directly to the consumer. That is one way of doing business. Obviously there are pros and cons of that business, that when you have a direct channel of selling to the customer, you get real time feedback, you get to try out products, and you can reach the consumer in the fastest way possible. But there are also cons to that channel, that may be a costly channel from a distribution perspective. Then there is your indirect channel, which is the company supplies to the distributor supplies to the wholesaler supplies to the retailer, and then the retailer supplies to the consumer. Obviously, modern trade is also, or modern channel is also an indirect channel where the company services um, to the uh, to the channel partner, be it a DMart or an Amazon or a Reliance, and the channel partner then in turn caters to the consumer. So these are all ways to reach the consumer. At the end of it, it's about how are you able to be present to the consumer at his time of need. So distribution channel also is one of the very important modes that you can build for your business, which gives you long-term benefits. So it's not that distribution channel is just a way of reaching the consumer. It can also be a strategy or a strategic advantage to you in the long run. So that is how a lot of the legacy companies like HUL, etc., because they have been able to build, massive distribution networks with distributors and retailers, and direct coverage to so many retail outlets. That is also one of the advantages they have. So in every time they launch a new product, their new product can instantly go to lakhs of outlets. So hence distribution can also serve as a strategic advantage for a company. So similar to a product, since we have a lot of service based startups also uh, as a part of the UIC, I thought I'll just briefly cover services also. So for the service also, for example, if you have an app, for an app also, there are, how do you reach the customer are also channels. So for, or an app or a service based company, so in your old times you would remember that people, there were agents who would book tickets, or for example, insurance is a service. Now for that there are agents who help you. Or if there's a KFC outlet, it's a product plus service based company. Or a McDonald's, where you have franchisees who help you reach the customer, which is an indirect channel. Direct channel will be you directly reaching the customer. So for example, you have your own bank branch which is servicing the customer, or your own app or your own website through which you reach the customer. So similar to a product, for a service also you have to think of distribution channels. Along with distribution channels, you have to also think of your marketing channels. So how do you drive awareness of your app, either through SEO, or through digital marketing on advertisements on Instagram or on Facebook, the whole metaverse, or through uh, through through traditional ways of marketing. So there are marketing channels and then there are distribution channels. For services, both go hand in hand. Yeah. So just a brief of the kind of modern channels that are there currently in India. One is obviously your modern trade retail, be it your DMarts and Reliances of the world. Modern trade retail is basically buying from the producer and then selling it to the consumer. Then there are a lot of these B2B chains, your Metros, Walmarts, Reliance, B2B Udans of the world, shop kiranas of the world. Shop kirana is very prevalent in MP. So these take the product from the producer, supply to the kirana outlets for you, and then the kirana outlets in turn sell to the consumer. So for a lot of new age startups who don't have direct reach or the distribution or the wherewithal to set up a proper distribution network, salesman who goes to the outlet, they can also use the B2B route to reach more kirana outlets. Then there is obviously e-commerce, Q-commerce, where the consumer can buy from the app. And obviously this space is very fast evolving, with a lot of q-commerce startups who have scaled up super fast and have changed the entire landscape. And then there is institutional business, which is your uh, railway outlets or your central canteens of the government, etc. Or you trying to do a collab with Domino's, for example. If you have a beverage and you want to collaborate with Domino's and say that why don't you sell my beverage as a combination. Or if you guys have traveled in airlines and seen a lot of those juice bottles, those are all collaborations which are part of the institutional channel, wherein you leverage the institutional channels to drive your distribution. So again, all these are channels to help you reach the customer. The consumer is India is spread across these channels. So ideally you should focus gradually on reaching all these channels. Yeah, again, just a simple piece on what is modern channel. Any modern channel, how do you differentiate a modern channel versus a general trade channel or a kirana outlet? Modern channel will have uh, a feature of you having to touch and feel the product, and a central billing system, central ordering system, a more structured way of payment. But the most important differentiator is how you are able to touch and feel the product versus in a kirana outlet. Now this is where, for a startup, the modern channels play a very important role, because in a traditional channel, in a kirana outlet, the consumer already has decided what he wants to buy. So once he reaches the before he reaches the kirana outlet, he knows that this is the soap that I want to buy. So he just goes to the shop and says, give me XYZ soap. For example, if he's a Lux consumer, he will say, can I get a Lux soap? But when he goes to a modern channel, he will see the shelf, and in a lot of cases the decision is made on the shelf, which is where the consumer can see your product, touch and feel, read the product ingredients, etc., and then make a decision on the spot, which is where you have a higher chance of success versus in a traditional kirana setup. The same applies to your Amazons and uh, Blinkits of the world, where the consumer has a chance to spot your product while crawling the website or while crawling the app. He has a chance to stop your product, to spot your product, read about your product, and hence you have a greater chance of driving awareness and conversion. So that is where these channels play a big role in, driving sales for you, and hence are very important distribution channels for you. Yeah, so there are obviously, it's not that modern channels have evolved. Modern trade channel existence is a new phenomenon in India. These have existed since 50, 60 years. The earliest chain, obviously, is the CSD canteen of government, which has been there since 70, 80 years. And then obviously, which is the earliest organized chain. Now there are obviously so many new ones which have come in the last 30, 40 years, starting with Subiksha, Big Bazaar, then your whole Nilgiri's Heritage. Uh, in our side of MP, there were so many who had started, like VMart, VMM, On Door. Now, obviously, DMart is a huge presence. So all of these have evolved in the last 30 years. But what has happened is that post the entry of quick commerce, this space has evolved in a big way, and the salience of these channels has increased manifold. So even for a company like ITC, for example, if traditional channels were previously contributing to 90%, and only 10% of the business was coming from these new age channels, that shift is now from a 90-10 to a 70-30. So that is how the landscape has evolved in the last 10 years. And hence, for you as a startup also, 30% of India, which in itself is a $5 trillion economy. So 30% of India can be accessed if you are able to tap into these modern channels. So that's the kind of opportunity that is there for you through these channels. If you are able to tap those 8, 9 top retailers in the country, you almost cover 30% of a $5 trillion economy, which is a huge market for anyone to work with. It's and hence you would have seen so many startups, scaling up so fast, the likes of Bombay Shaving Company and so many others, because they've been able to tap these channels which give them direct access to so many consumers at once. I think the presentation went off. Yeah. So just a quick, what is driving this shift of Indian consumers from a traditional channel to a modern trade or a modern channel? Consumer buying behavior is shifting. Why is it shifting? Because people have less time now, especially in the metros. They have more money to spend, but they have less time, and hence they want convenience. That is one of the main reasons for this shifting. Second is obviously that now more and more women are also working, and hence obviously a paucity of time, and also a paucity of time to cook food at home, and hence a lot of packaged food, processed food, and then people looking at healthier options within these processed foods. That's all of that is happening because of this shift in urbanization, and shift rising disposable income. So that's what's majorly driving this. Obviously there is one more point of how the consumer behavior has evolved versus how it was previously. So 20 years back, if our parents were buying, for example, someone was buying a Lux, all their life they would be using Lux. But nowadays, consumer is not like that. Consumer wants to experiment. He wants to try. He wants to, you know, you have to continuously engage the consumer as a brand. For example, even myself personally as a consumer for soap, I keep trying out different soap products, or obviously also keep shifting formats, like buying a shower gel versus a soap. Obviously though that was not the case 20 years back. That in itself presents an opportunity for us. More than 60-70% of India is under 30, and those consumers under 30 are willing to experiment. Hence they are willing to give new brands a chance. And by new brands, I mean all the brands that as a startup we are able to come up with. Consumers are willing to give us a try versus in historical times. So all of these are important trends. Obviously there is infra scale up. a lot of capex scale up is happening, logistics is improving. So earlier you in a localized setup from Indore or Ujjain may not think of reaching distinct parts of India and covering entire length and breadth of India. But now through Amazon, or by just listing your products on Amazon or Flipkart, you are able to reach the entire length and breadth of the country. So obviously, government is investing in a lot of logistics, roads, infrastructure, and all of that helps in driving better connectivity in the country. Then obviously, internet is one of the main reasons as to how consumer behavior is shifting and how now more people are aware of new products and new brands in the market. Obviously, in India now almost 60-70 crore people have a smartphone, which is a device which you can use to your advantage to reach them. And there are so many avenues, right from WhatsApp to Facebook, to YouTube, to Instagram, so many digital avenues for us to reach the consumer, because the consumer has a smartphone which from which he's continuously consuming content. And in the process of consuming content, obviously, therein lies the advantage for us. In fact, one of the biggest marketing channels that has evolved in the recent times is influencer marketing, wherein so many people are tying up with nano, micro, macro influencers, you know, uh, to advertise about their products, because nowadays consumers don't just believe what they see on the TV. They want something relatable, or someone who they can relate to. If that same person says the same message to them. So, for example, one of the classic examples is a brand called Mother's Purse, which ITC had recently acquired. That brand is beautifully built on mothers communication, on how they were able to build trust in one mom. That mom communicated to 10 other moms, and hence suddenly all over time, mothers started believing on that product. They did a lot of influencer marketing, wherein city level influencers, city level new mothers started promoting the products on Instagram, and that's how the product became relatable. So there are, obviously, with internet there are both distribution and marketing channels which are evolving. Yeah, and then obviously quick commerce has come in and changed the entire landscape in terms of how consumers shop. Earlier, when we were shopping, we used to, or when our parents used to shop, they used to list the products, and then maybe bi-weekly or once a month go and use that list and buy from a kirana outlet, or from a traditional outlet. Nowadays, consumer doesn't have any such behavior. He's not purchasing on in a planned way. All the purchase is unplanned. He wants three products, he will just add it on Blinkit and get it in 10 minutes. So consumer behavior itself has evolved in a big way, wherein also lies a lot of opportunity, obviously, as I've continuously reiterated, for you to first drive reach. Because if you get listed in one of these channels, you are able to instantly reach so many consumers. But also, for a lot of indulgent categories, also drive consumption. So for example, one of the big success stories of q-commerce is uh, products like ice creams, wherein earlier, if the customer wanted to eat ice cream, he would not every time go and buy, but now at the click of a button he can get it at home. Or all these other indulgent categories like chocolates, biscuits, a lot of frozen products like McCain. Even ITC has launched uh, products in with our own brands like MasterChef. We have recently acquired a brand called Prasuma, which sells momos, frozen momos. So all these new age products, for them, their primary distribution is actually quick commerce only, because the consumer has an instant urge to eat and he's able to buy at a click of a button, which earlier was not possible for him. So that's how quick commerce is giving avenues, both from a distribution perspective and from a category shaping and building perspective. Also, there are opportunities for you to reach the consumer faster and drive consumption. Yeah. Now, obviously, while all of these are pros, there is a big con also to this. That with all of this happening, a lot of the power is shifting from a producer to a retailer, and hence these retailers, because they know they give you instant access to so many consumers, also are very hard negotiators. They will ask you for the best of margins, for the best of price offers that you have to run to attract the consumer, and hence managing your P&L with those kinds of pressures obviously brings its own challenges. So it's very difficult to maintain that balance where these channels are beneficial but also make you bottom line money, because in the end for any company it's not only about top line turnover, it's also about bottom line. If as a startup you are able to grow both sustainably, that's when the investors will show interest in your company. Yeah. So why should startups enter the modern trade? It's a summary of whatever we discussed. There's a low barrier entry. You don't have to set up distribution. You don't have to reach 10 million outlets. You just have to, oh sorry, 10 lakh outlets. You don't have to reach so many outlets. You just have to crack that one DMart which is there in 450 outlets pan India, or that one Reliance which has 2000 outlets, or that one Blinkit which has 2000 dark stores, and you are able to instantly reach so many more consumers versus you setting up your own distribution channel. Similarly, obviously, the right shopper profile, because all these channels have are being used by people with disposable income, people who have the money to spend, and hence will also be able to discern the value add that you bring in your product, be it a healthy cookie or or organic agarbatti. So many of those products, these are the consumers who are willing to pay a premium for those products, and then obviously give you good coverage. All of that's there. One major benefit from a supply perspective is also aggregation of supply. So instead of you supplying to 10 lakh outlets, you can directly supply to DMart, which has 10 DCs in the country, and they take care and service to the remaining outlets. Or you can supply to Reliance, which has 50 DCs, or you can supply to a Blinkit, which is 20 DCs. Obviously, you will be able to aggregate demand better. You will be able to hence manage your supply chain costs also much better. So that is one big advantage that you have versus you going to each outlet independently, which is very cost inefficient for a startup. And obviously from an investor perspective also, investors value those companies who are able to crack these channels, because they understand that it's not so easy. So if someone has been able to go into these channels, obviously they have some value proposition which the channels have liked. So for example, one of the most difficult accounts to get your product listed is DMart. DMart generally doesn't list anyone's product just like that. You have to have a lot of convincing and have a superb product with a clear value proposition. So if you are able to list in a DMart, the investors will value that it's a great thing that we have been able to list in an account which is as choosy and as difficult as that. Because if a DMart believes in your product, the investors will also trust your product. So obviously all these are important points. Like I had said, there are so many success stories built in the last 10 years itself, wherein so many D2C startups have scaled up. And this is just the 4 or 5 that I had in the top, at the top of my mind, but so many of them, like so many in the, especially in the personal care space, have scaled up hugely. Uh, and in the healthy eating space itself, be it a yoga bar or a whole truth or a Prasuma or a Mama Earth or a Mother's Splash or a Moxie Beauty, a Minimalist was recently acquired by HUL for 3,000 crores. So imagine a 10-year-old startup, valued at 3,000 crores. And the founders obviously had a very good exit. So many companies have been built in the last 10 years using these distribution channels. And hence these channels obviously are a great boon for any startup. Yeah. Now, having discussed why these channels are important, what is it that you should do in these channels? From my 10-12 years of working in this industry, this is the summary of what you should do. It's fairly simple. You have to first ensure that you are listed, which is drive distribution in the product. Once you are listed, you have to ensure that you are available, and While it seems simple, it's very difficult to ensure availability constantly for your products across all the dark stores or all the stores in these accounts. And hence, once you are listed, it's important for you to ensure availability. Once you are available, then it should also be visible, be it on the shelf or on the app. For example, if you type sunscreen on Amazon, you will see some, I don't know, more than 1,000 listings of sunscreen on Amazon. Now obviously if you are listed on the 1,000th, 10,000th or 500th number, no consumer is going to buy your product. So how do you ensure that you are visible on top of the fold? When he first searches the product, are you visible there on his face? Because the consumer attention span is less than 8 seconds nowadays. We as consumers, because of our whole habit of consumption of content, of reels and watching, so much content overload is there on today's consumer that he has an attention span of only 8 seconds. Now you have to grab his attention in that 8 seconds, for which it's very important that you are there on his face and visible when he is planning to make that buying decision. Similarly, in a modern trade setup, are you visible on the shelf in an eye level visibility on shelf? That's super important for you to convert the consumer. If your product is lying in the bottom shelf somewhere, the consumer may not even notice it, and your chance is gone. And the last is obviously, what is the kind of value proposition from a pricing perspective that you are offering to the consumer. So it depends on what your product is. If your product is a me too similar product, then obviously you have to be cheaper than competition. Whereas if your product is differentiated, then you can price slightly higher. All these are part of pricing strategies in the marketing 101. But what is the right pricing for your product? Once you are listed, available, visible, then what's the kind of pricing for you to convert the consumer? Because the consumer may have you in his consideration set. For example, he has come to buy a biscuit. Now he is okay. Assume that he is okay with both a glucose and a tiger biscuit. But if a tiger biscuit is 10 rupee cheaper, maybe he will shift. And hence, if the consumer is okay buying two brands, pricing plays an important role from that consideration set to converting the consumer. So that is where pricing is very important. So these are the main fundamentals of of modern trade, or any channel for that matter. You should be listed, available, visible, and have the right pricing strategy. If you do these basics right, you will be able to win in these channels. Obviously, if we have to go into details of listing, for example, how do you ensure that the product is listed? So there's a whole process across retailers where you first go pitch your product to them. They have to buy into your value proposition. You do trials with them, get them to taste the product or use the product. Once they like the product, then if they are interested, they will go into commercial discussions in terms of what is the kind of margin that you are going to offer, what is the kind of payment terms that you have, uh, and and maybe what is the kind of promo support, investment support to showcase your product. So for example, even how do you be top of fold in Amazon? How are you the first listing? Similarly, in modern trade, how do you get additional shelf space when you have launched your product initially? All of that costs investment, all of that costs money. It's not that just because you launch a product, you will come in at the first fold of Amazon. When you launch a product, your organic ranking will be last. You have to slowly build relevance, build trials, build consumptions, and you have to also invest strategically in media, so that sometimes your product shows on the top, wherein you drive conversions from the consumer. So all of that is part of the initial commercial discussions, post which the retailer will register your vendor, place an order. And then what initially a lot of retailers do is they don't list your product to all their stores pan India one shot. So for example, a DMart, when you go, they will first list your products in 84 out of 450 outlets. They will test your product in those 84 outlets. If your product works and if they are happy with it, they will extend it to from 84 to 140, 150, then gradually to 250, then 350, 450. They have this whole mechanism of crawl, walk, run, wherein you start small, prove your success, and then move to the next set of outlets. Because obviously for these accounts, space is at a premium. They can either keep your product or something else which sells faster, from which they make money. So it's not like space on a shelf or on an aisle is, or on the aisle is infinite. There is limited space on the shelf. So how are you able to capture that shelf space? For that, the retailer should also be convinced of the product's capability to sell, and hence they start slow and then they gradually expand to more number of outlets. Then obviously there are critical terms, and there are mainly two critical terms. One is what is the kind of margin that you are giving to them, and second, what is the kind of uh, credit terms that you are willing to give. Because all these retailers will work on some kind of credit norm, and obviously that costs capital, working capital for you. So as a startup, there will always be pressure on working capital, and working capital management is one of the most important skills, in my understanding, from a startup, from me having worked with the likes of Zepto, Blinkit, Instamart, even Dunzo, Ola, all of these at a very early stage. There were startups who were able to manage their working capital very well. They are able to survive. There are those who are not able to manage their working capital well. They are the ones who die. So, so working capital management, how do you ensure that you have enough cash in the bank? That is super important. So that is where your credit days to the retailer, your faster reconciliation, all of that becomes very important. So the less number of days you have to get your money back, the better for you. Similarly, the less margin you have to offer to the retailer, the better for you. The less margin you give him, the more you make. But obviously it's give and take, and you have to negotiate that by seeing your starting position in that retailer. Yeah, then obviously from a supply chain perspective, one of the most important matrices are is fill rate, and OTIF means on time in full availability. So are you able to supply the stock on time and in good quantities? So for example, if they have ordered for 100 units, are you able to supply 100 units, or you supply only 20 units? That becomes a very important metric, because again, if you are not able to supply, retailer has allocated some space for you on the shelf which goes vacant. That is opportunity loss of revenue for him, which he will not entertain. So he would rather keep someone who is able to give stocks versus someone who's not able to give. And hence, fill rate is one of the most important metrics. And obviously, if you're not available on shelf, you will not sell. And hence, for you also as a manufacturer, it's a very important important metric, that are you available on the shelf at the time of consumer buying or not. So and there are then obviously other metrics like nuances to how you supply. Some retailers supply through DC, some have store level supplies, but those are all nuances which can be figured out. Yeah, I'll skip this slide. This is more about basics, like you should have unique barcode. So it can't be that you launch two products which have the same barcode, because then the retailer will not, because barcode is the unique identifier at the retailer end. So hence barcode is super important. It can't be that you write the same barcode on two products. Otherwise, so they will not be able to invert your product in their warehouse if you don't have distinct barcodes for each product. Then obviously you have to ensure that packaging is durable, because there is movement of stock from your factory to their DC, from their DC to their outlet. Obviously products are handled by labor in a rough way, and not everything can be perfect when there is a manual intervention involved. And hence, are your product durable? Are they packaged well, so that they don't break or get damaged in transit? Then what is the shelf life of your product? If you have very low shelf life, then your product will get expired, which will lead to business loss to you or the retailer. So all of those things are obviously very important. Yeah. Obviously, once your product is available, then it's about driving visibility. So are you able to, like I was saying, are you able to be there on shelf, eye level visibility for the retailer or not? Are you able to, similarly in an online channel, able to be on top fold for the consumer or not? Is he able to see your product or not? Once you are available, visibility is one of the most important, one of the most important metrics for you to ensure. And obviously, then what these channels also give you an advantage of is also driving trials of your products. So you would have seen with Blinkit or with Zepto or Instamart, once you place an order, you get a lot of free samples also. So those are the ways in which manufacturers are reaching the consumers directly and driving sampling and trials. See, because ultimately your final consumer cohort will be a subset of the people who try your product. So the more people who try your product, there will be a percentage of those who will convert and eventually stick to it. So try getting trials in FMCG is one of the most important and difficult tasks. So one way of getting trials is you advertising, but then you advertise, then you ensure that the consumer, then you hope that some part of that consumer, you know, goes to one of the distribution channels and buys your product. The other is you just directly sample the product. So sampling is one in which you can directly reach so many consumers at once. Obviously, sampling is a costly channel because you have to give that sample for free or for a nominal fee, and hence you are bearing that cost. But the advantage is that you reach so many consumers at once, and hence it's a trade-off. You have to choose basis your brand. If you are totally convinced on your product and you know that it's a sticky category where consumers don't generally move from one brand to the other, then maybe trials are very important. Maybe in a snacks category where the consumer is willing to experiment, buy one chip one time, the other chip the other time, maybe it's not so important. So it depends on the category in terms of what the relevance of sampling is. See, obviously there are a lot of, while we have talked of most pros of modern channels, there are some risks also to modern channel. Like one of the risk is obviously over dependence on one chain. You can't be too reliant on one account, because then they will end up squeezing more margins from you and or negotiating harder with you. And hence you can't just rely on one person directly. uh, Obviously there's a working capital issue. Then there is and hence you have to ensure that you have good working capital. The third is you can't underestimate the cost of media in these channels, the cost of marketing in these channels, the cost of driving visibility in these channels, and hence you have to have your own PNL working at the start before you reach the account. You should know what is the kind of margin you are willing to offer, what's the kind of promo you are willing to offer, what's the kind of visibility you are willing to offer, and hence what's the kind of money that you can make bottom line. Those things should be clear with you, along with your most highest margin or the highest promo or the highest visibility, so that when you go and negotiate, you are clear, this is the best that I can offer. Otherwise your PNL will get affected. So these are all important points to consider. Yeah, so again, basics once you are checked, then most important is for you to reach out to these uh, retailers. And all retailers have different processes of reaching out. For example, Amazon has a B2C marketplace where you can directly list your product. So you don't need any intermediary or someone for you to pitch the product. Whereas in a Blinkit or a Instamart or a Zepto, you have to actually reach out to their head office directly. You have to reach out to someone in Blinkit who handles the category there and pitch your product there. Similarly, in a DMart, you can reach out to DMart's regional team. DMart's regional team for MP, for example, may be sitting based out of Ahmedabad or Indore. I'm not sure. So you have to reach out to them, showcase your product. If they see value, maybe they will try it out in some 5 outlets there or 10 outlets there. So there are different ways of reaching each of these 8 or 9 retailers. You need to have the right contact. You need to reach out to those contacts, show your product, convince them of your value proposition, and then maybe maybe they will take it forward, they will do a trial maybe in some outlets, they will see the performance of a product in some outlets. If they are convinced, they will extend it to more outlets in the same geography, then to more geographies, then to pan India. So it all happens in a gradual way, but it's all about reaching those right stakeholders. And those right stakeholders, there is no one answer. It can be, in the case of a Blinkit, Swiggy, Zepto, their head office teams. In the case of DMart, it can be the DMart regional team sitting out of that state. So it's obviously it's not that easy to reach out to them. You need to have the right contacts to reach out to the right category person who's handling that category. Yeah, so that's it broadly. Those are the things that I had to share. I'm open to questions if I have any, if you guys have any. Muskan, you're not audible somehow.
मुस्कान, आपका वॉइस ऑडिबल नहीं है। सर, एक क्वेश्चन है कि इसमें कुछ स्पिरिचुअल बेस्ड प्रोडक्ट है हमारे एक स्टार्टअप के, महाकाल.com। सो व्हाट डू यू सजेस्ट इज मॉडर्न ट्रेड आर सुटेबल फॉर दिस काइंड ऑफ कैटेगरी?
स्पिरिचुअल बेस्ड एज इन आप बोल रहे हो अगरबत्ती टाइप प्रोडक्ट्स या
सर, some gifting products, Rudraksh, some sort of let's say statue, और कुछ जो रिचुअल्स में भी काम में आते हैं।
Yeah, I think see modern more than modern trade, मुझे लगता है e-commerce और quick commerce में बहुत अपॉर्चुनिटी है इसके लिए भी। वैसे अभी अगर आप क्विक कॉमर्स पे देखेंगे, आप शिवरात्रि के टाइम पे अगर आप, बिकॉज क्विक कॉमर्स में क्या है कि कंज्यूमर, अभी जो कंज्यूमर है उसको सेलिब्रेट सारे फेस्टिवल्स करने होते हैं, बट उनके पास वो प्रोडक्ट्स रेडीली अवेलेबल नहीं है। अगर मैं बैंगलोर में हूँ, मे बी मेरे पास गंगाजल नहीं है, या मेरे पास रुद्राक्ष नहीं है, या और भी अगर पूजा में कुछ स्पेसिफिक आइटम यूज होता है जो बैंगलोर में मेरे लिए अवेलेबल नहीं है, तो क्विक कॉमर्स मतलब इनफैक्ट इन क्विक कॉमर्स में जो शिव जी को हम बेलपत्र चढ़ाते हैं वो भी बहुत सेल होता है। शिवरात्रि के टाइम पे वो बेलपत्र के 6 लीव्स भी मतलब 80 रुपीज 100 रुपीज के आते हैं, और मेरे जैसे कंज्यूमर्स खरीद रहे हैं उसको, क्योंकि मेरे पास ऑप्शन नहीं है। मैं अगर एक अपार्टमेंट में बैंगलोर में रहता हूँ तो मेरे पास ऑप्शन नहीं है कि अब मैं जाके कहीं पे वो पेड़ ढूंढूं या वो बेलपत्र की लीव्स ढूंढूं, बट मुझे भी पूजा करनी है। तो मुझे अगर पूजा करनी है तो मेरे को वो लीव्स चाहिए, या मुझे वो रुद्राक्ष चाहिए, या मुझे और कुछ पूजा आइटम चाहिए। तो क्विक कॉमर्स में इसका बहुत स्कोप है, क्योंकि वहां पे हर फेस्टिवल, जैसे अब दिवाली थी तो दिवाली के लिए दिए बहुत सेल हो रहे थे क्विक कॉमर्स में, और बहुत सेल हुए। इवन फ्लावर्स भी हो रहे थे, लोग फ्लावर भी खरीद रहे हैं ऑनलाइन आजकल। घर पे फ्लावर खरीद रहे हैं क्योंकि उनके पास टाइम नहीं है कि वो जाके बाहर किसी आउटलेट से जाके फ्लावर खरीदे। तो ऐसे टॉपिकल आइटम्स का बहुत स्कोप है, स्पेशली इन क्विक कॉमर्स। मॉडर्न ट्रेड थोड़ा सा प्लान करके है, अगर किसी को रुद्राक्ष खरीदना है, क्या वो डीमार्ट में जाके खरीदेगा, आई एम नॉट श्योर, बट उसको 2 मिनट में ब्लिंकिट में मिल रहा है तो शायद वो जरूर ले लेगा। तो राइट प्रोडक्ट के लिए राइट चैनल ढूंढना इंपॉर्टेंट है। ऑन दी अदर हैंड, अगर कोई अगरबत्ती है, जैसे अभी एक कंपनी है फूल को करके, वो क्या करती है, मंदिरों से जो वेस्ट फ्लावर होता है वो फ्लावर लेती है और उसी फ्लावर को कन्वर्ट करके उससे अगरबत्ती बनाती है। अब वो उसकी यूएसपी है कि आपको महाकाल के मंदिर के फ्लावर्स का फूल मिल रहा है, का अगरबत्ती मिल रहा है। कुछ लोगों के लिए उसकी बहुत स्पिरिचुअल वैल्यू है, तो वो फ्लावर, वो अगरबत्ती खरीदने के लिए बहुत लोग इंटरेस्टेड है, और वो अगरबत्ती अमेजोन, ब्लिंकिट पे बहुत बिकती है। वो कंपनी इतनी अच्छी चलती है कि उन लोगों, मतलब उनके पास आलिया भट्ट जैसे ब्रांड एम्बेसडर्स भी हैं। सो दे आर एबल टू अफोर्ड सो मच, इज माई पॉइंट। ऑब्वियसली वो पैसे कमा रहे हैं तभी अफोर्ड कर पा रहे हैं। तो हर तरह के प्रोडक्ट का स्कोप है, आपको राइट चैनल ढूंढना है। डीमार्ट जैसे चैनल में क्या है, बहुत ज्यादा वैल्यू कॉन्शियस कंज्यूमर आता है। अगर आप डीमार्ट का कंज्यूमर प्रोफाइल देखेंगे तो उसका कंज्यूमर बहुत ज्यादा वैल्यू कॉन्शियस है। वहां पे शायद कोई ऐसा प्रोडक्ट चलेगा जो वैल्यू दे रहा हो प्राइस के कम, प्राइस प्राइस मतलब वैल्यू फॉर मनी कोई प्रोडक्ट हो तो वो शायद वहाँ ज़्यादा चलेगा। इस तरह के जो यूनिक प्रोडक्ट्स हैं जो ओकेजन बेस्ड हैं वो शायद अल्टरनेट मतलब वो शायद क्विक कॉमर्स और ई कॉमर्स में ज़्यादा चलेंगे। सॉरी, एक और क्वेश्चन है, इज देयर एनी मिनिमम प्रोडक्ट रेंज वैरायटी दैट अ मैन्युफैक्चरिंग? आई थिंक ऐसा कुछ स्पेसिफिक नहीं है कि आपको ज़्यादा प्रोडक्ट्स चाहिए, रेंज चाहिए, आप एक प्रोडक्ट के साथ भी पहुंच सकते हैं। बहुत सारी कंपनीज हैं जो बनी ही एक प्रोडक्ट के बेसिस पर है। जैसे जो रिसेंट में एग्जांपल दे रहा था, प्रसूमा करके एक कंपनी है जो आईटीसी ने एक्वायर करी है, आप लोग देख भी सकते हैं, ऑब्वियसली हंड्रेड्स ऑफ करोड़ में एक्वायर की है। उसका भी एक ही प्रोडक्ट है मोमोज, ऑब्वियसली उस मोमो फ्रोजन मोमोज, बट उस मोमोज के 3-4 वर्जन है, चिकन मोमो, वेज मोमो, पनीर मोमो, ऑल ऑफ दैट, बट अल्टीमेटली इट्स जस्ट वन प्रोडक्ट। उस प्रोडक्ट से ही उसका 60-70% रेवेन्यू आता है। तो ऐसा नहीं है कि आपको बहुत सारे प्रोडक्ट चाहिए, इनफैक्ट मुझे लगता है आपको एक ही हीरो प्रोडक्ट चाहिए होता है। आपके पास अगर एक हीरो प्रोडक्ट है, बाकी सारे प्रोडक्ट कैन पिगी बैक ऑन दैट वन प्रोडक्ट। इवन मदर स्पर्श जैसे प्रोडक्ट है, अभी जो कंपनी है उसका मदर स्पर्श का वाइप्स बिकता है, वो 50-60% बिकता है, वही उसका मेन प्रोडक्ट है। अब उसके अराउंड उस प्रोडक्ट के साथ ही उन्होंने स्टार्ट किया था, अब उन्होंने उसके अराउंड पूरी बेबी केयर रेंज लॉन्च कर दी, बट दे स्टार्टेड विद दैट वन प्रोडक्ट विच बिकेम अ ह्यूज सक्सेस, थ्रू विच उन्हें कंज्यूमर का ट्रस्ट मिला। तो आप ऐसा नहीं है कि आपको बहुत सारे प्रोडक्ट्स चाहिए, आपके पास एक हीरो प्रोडक्ट भी है तो भी आप उससे स्टार्ट कर सकते हैं। आप उसमें इम्पॉर्टेंट ये है कि वो जो एक प्रोडक्ट है वो एकदम डिफरेंशिएटेड, यूनिक और फर्स्ट मूवर होना चाहिए, ताकि कंज्यूमर वहां से आप अपना ब्रांड बिल्ड कर पाए। एक बार आपने ब्रांड बिल्ड कर लिया, फिर आप दूसरी कैटेगरीज में भी जा सकते हैं। जैसे योगा बार करके एक कंपनी जब आई थी, 10 साल पहले कोई इंडिया में प्रोटीन बार या एनर्जी बार्स के बारे में जानता नहीं था, तो उन लोगों ने सिर्फ एनर्जी बार से स्टार्ट किया। अब उन्होंने जब एनर्जी बार्स में अपनी एक इक्विटी बिल्ड कर ली और बिकॉज वो फर्स्ट मूवर थे उनको एडवांटेज मिला, अब उन्होंने बहुत सारे और प्रोडक्ट्स लॉन्च कर दिए। अब उनका प्रोटीन पाउडर भी आता है, अब उनका प्रोटीन शेक भी आता है, अब उनके म्यूसली आता है, उनके ओट्स आते हैं, अब उनके बहुत सारे प्रोडक्ट्स आते हैं। बट एक हीरो प्रोडक्ट के साथ आप स्टार्ट कर सकते हो, उसको आप अगर बिल्ड सक्सेसफुली कर पाए तो ऑन द बैक ऑफ दैट आप बहुत सारे और प्रोडक्ट्स बेच सकते हो। मुस्कान, यू नॉट ऑडिबल।
आई गेस मुस्कान आपका कुछ ऑडियो इशू है। So
Yeah.
let's conclude this session, sir. On behalf of Ujjain Smart City, we really grateful to you for your valuable time, and whatever you shared with us, our startups are up to the point and and applicable to all the startups. We really thanks to you, sir, for your time and the kind of session you conducted for our startups. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you so much for inviting. Thank you guys. All the best. Bye.